Okay, we are recording. So this is episode 2 of Interdimensional Fellowship Club. I have with me a super awesome lady named Kim. She has a channel on YouTube called Intuitiview. She is a medium and she does all sorts of classes and has a really good community on YouTube. Where people get together and do all sorts of readings and have book clubs and get together and support each other. And I feel like that's really amazing. So I asked her to be on the show, and here she is. So
hello. Thank
hello.
you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm such a huge fan. I love your show. I've been watching it for a couple of years now, and you are spot on. Like, you're so good at your readings.
Oh,
or your guides. I guess it's your guides. So, but
yeah. Thank you. I always tell people, it's a process, and it's not 100%. Nobody is. It's never going to be. As long as we're in a human form trying to do this, it's not going to be perfect. But anybody can learn. Anybody can learn. I'm a late bloomer. I feel like I had patchy experiences my whole life, and once I kind of got into a practice that was, as solid and consistent, and it took chances. You got to kind of put yourself out there and take chances and that kind of thing. You get better. You get better and you improve, and anybody can do it.
I really love watching your process. Like you say that you have a lot of pictures and a lot of kind of movie references and songs and stuff that come in, and just like you can almost see the gears turning in your mind when you're scribbling on the paper, and just the way, like, how eloquent you are is really and also you're very accurate, I would say. And just like watching you throughout the years and being like, oh, I remember her saying that. Like, it's really incredible. And then also I feel like you have a very kind of open, compassionate sort of quality to you that is, and very sincere as well. And so it's just really a joy to watch you.
Well, thank you. And I think that's that empath side I always talk about. I've always been sensitive, loved animals, been very, and also very, egos take different forms, right? And some egos take that kind of big inflated form, and mine is kind of that smaller kind of, can I do it? Can I do it? And I think people relate to that, because that's the form a lot of egos take, is that, wanting to get it right, and that kind of, a little bit of being intimidated, and so I think that underdog, and I let that show, because I think it's important. I think it's important for people to know that not every person who does this is this super confident, whatever. That there's a process to it, and you need to keep yourself spiritually healthy, but that egos take different form. And I think that what you're talking about is my kind of sensitivity, but also that side of that, the way my ego takes that form. I think a lot of people can relate to it, because we all have those, can I do it? Am I even supposed to be doing this? What am I doing? And I think sharing that is very important, so that people know that it's a process. You get better. But to not feel bad if you make a mistake, or if you don't get something right, or if you're not hearing this well today, or whatever. It's very normal. It's all very, very normal.
For sure. And I feel like there's a vulnerability about it too. Like, you're kind of letting your whole process play out on camera, and also bringing it into a community is so great. Like, I remember you and Deb started that first intuition class. It was a while back. It was a couple of years ago, I think now.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't have funds, but I really wanted to do it. So I emailed Debbie. I was like, hey, I don't really have any money, but I'd really like to do this. And she was like, well, just give me $20. It's fine. And so I did. And I met some really cool people. I had a really good time. And I think that was the first time I ever really joined like well, any online community, that's for sure, but like any sort of like spiritual community. And it was just, it kind of blew my mind how supportive everybody was. It was really, it was, I thought it was really special. It was really cool.
Yeah, we have a great community, and then we all have built these little communities, and then we join communities when we do stuff like this, when we collaborate or have interviews and things like that, and it just brings more and more people into the fold. And I think a lot of people, when we kind of were talking about this before we got on, that a lot of people are having more spiritual experiences now that they don't quite understand, or they're trying to explore, and there are places to do that, but not every place feels safe. And so I think that this is we built kind of safe communities to ask these questions where you feel like, am I weird? Am I crazy? What's going on? That you have these safe spaces to be able to talk about things and try to get some answers, when these people are different, whether they're psychics. I kind of consider myself an intuitive. It's kind of the same thing, but that when you're connected, you can kind of get maybe some more nuanced answers that come from a bigger, broader spiritual kind of, the super highway basically of energy.
Right.
And you try to bring these in so that people can have more understanding. And I learn with every reading, I learn something new.
Okay.
Just recently I learned that when this is just an example, but I read for somebody who had just had COVID, and I just had COVID for the first time out of all this time, but I got really, really like feeling really low, like my mood was really low, everything just kind of depressed down. And what I learned from reading for her was that when empaths get COVID, at least right now, since we're so close to when all of the drama happened, that you take some of that on. You're taking kind of the collective, like upset and sadness and fear and all the stuff that went along with COVID. So if you're an empath having COVID, it affects you in kind of a different way, and it can affect you in kind of not a worse way necessarily, but just in a different way that maybe you didn't expect. And so now that I can tell if I can tell empaths now that if you have COVID, expect maybe a little bit of fear to come in, or a little bit of depression, or a little bit of stuff, because you're taking on that other stuff, not just the germs, not just the thing that made you sick. There's other energy at play here. So, right. Just interesting stuff like that I would never ask for myself. I would never think to do that, but for somebody else, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. And that's how the information comes in.
I'm wondering if empaths, going into, like when you have to get COVID, I had it maybe a couple of months ago, and I had it for a good month. And yeah, it's very similar to I felt very depressed and very low. But now that I know that I'm actually transmuting a lot of like collective consciousness when it comes to that, I can kind of use that and use my intention and open up my heart and transmute so much of that. And I feel like that's probably helping out humanity, actually clean up some of the ick.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's doing. And that's what empaths do. They take on the pain of the world, right? It sounds like a lofty thing, but that is what they do. And they, like you said, you can transmute it internally, but you can also release it and, give it to the universe to transmute for you. If you don't have the strength to do that, or if you just don't know if you don't know if you do, so yeah.
I guess ask your teams or your angels or whoever to help you out. So
absolutely.
Let me see. I have some questions written down. Sure. I'm wondering a little bit about, I'm wondering about your childhood. What kind of childhood did you have? I seem to remember maybe you came from kind of a religious background.
I was raised in the Mormon church. And so, and it helped me in a way, because it was my introduction to the spiritual. It's never been odd for me. The spiritual has always been part of my life. the only thing that's changed, and I always had a connection. The only thing that's changed now is my verbiage, the way that, and the way that I think about it.
Okay.
You know, as a kid, you think of, you know, God as a father figure, and you think of Jesus as kind of a brother figure, and that's how you think of it. And so that's how I approached it as a kid. And I would, what I realized is that through my kind of tween period and teen period was, and even into my adulthood, is that when I asked a question that I was struggling with during the week, if I was aware, if I had my awareness open on Sunday, something was going to answer my question. And I just put that together somehow. I don't even know how it happened. So I would ask a question during the week and say, like, I'm struggling with, you know, friends at school. How do I? And then sure enough, on Sunday, I would, somebody, either a talk would happen or a song or something, somebody would say something, or there'd be a comment that answered that prayer or answered that question. And all it was, and this is usually what it is my awareness was open. I was aware, I was looking for it. I was waiting for it because I knew it was going to come. And I think that's how manifesting works. I also think it's how communication with our guides works. You know, once you ask the question, just be alert. They're going to answer you. Think of it more like asking a waiter asking for something from a waiter in a restaurant. You know, if you say, "Can I please have a glass of water?" and he leaves to go get your glass of water, you don't sit there and say, "Is he going to bring it? What's going on? Is he going to get my water?" Is it, you know, you just know it's coming, right? You just know it's coming. And that's exactly the way you need to think about your guides. They're going to find a way to answer you. And it's our job to just be aware. And what usually happens is we ask the question and we forget, or we ask the question and we think it should come in this form, or it should come in this way. And so we only look for one thing, where it's like, no, your awareness just needs to be open and looking all over the place and just waiting for it to come, because it's going to come.
Yeah, exactly. And then not to don't beat yourself up if you don't hear some booming voice in your head either. You know, like it'll show up in whatever way it wants to show up. And I did that for a long time. I feel like I kind of shut myself down even more by kind of beating myself up by being like, I'm not hearing my guides. I'm not connected, you know? And it's like the more you think you're not connected, you won't be connected. So
Right. I
yeah.
still do that. You know, I still do that,
Oh,
Gina,
yeah.
because what happens is that you see other people read and you see other people do what they do, and you think, why is it so easy for them? Or why is it so, and it's not. It's process, it's practice. And it doesn't mean that it's any easier or any clearer for them. They've just gotten so they trust it. They get that little inkling, because it's your guides are subtle. They're not meant to be flashing lights in front of you, because it would be too distracting through life. Think about that. If your guides were constantly yelling at you and talking to you and doing stuff to you, you'd be like, what is going on? What do I do? You know, how do I even live my life? It would kind of be too much it would be too much of an interference of free will, which is the whole point of being here, is making decisions and seeing the outcome and understanding consequence and cause and effect. It's all part of it. So if they were flashing neon signs all the time, it wouldn't give us that opportunity to make decisions. And even when you hear your guides clearly, sometimes you don't listen. I remember very clearly, and this is like it's such a good example, because it's such a non-thing, but it's a good example of how people are. I was in an airport in the UK. If you're going into an airport at Heathrow, it is incredible. My daughter lives in the UK. That's why I was there. But I was coming home and I was by myself, and there were a bazillion people in line for security. And I was right in the middle of that line. So I was like halfway there. And I noticed another line that said, check your passport here. And I thought, oh no, should I have gone there first? And my guide said, no, stay where you are. I could hear them, stay where you are. And I kept looking at this thing and thinking, should I just go over there? And I kept hearing, stay where you are. But what did I do? I got out of line and I went over and asked, is this it? It's just that human thing in us that our ego overrides it sometimes because our ego is keeping us safe and our guides are trying to get us to ungrip and let things flow. And it's so hard for us to do that and let go of control and let go of, but so even when you can hear them, it doesn't mean you're always going to obey everything. And they don't care. It's part of the experience and they know that. And they want us to learn. That's the only thing they want us to do is learn. And I learned that you guys were right. I shouldn't have gotten out of line. And it was it was a non-concept. It wasn't life and death, but it was a good example of how you can your ego can override it anyway. So even when you can hear your guides well, just to let people know, it doesn't mean you're always going to just do what they say. It's part of being human,
True. Yeah, that's what the whole thing's about, right? Playing the game, playing the human game. It's all about expanding and opening up from this contracted state. And if you come into it and you already have all this help, what's the point? You already have a lot of the answers. So yeah, I feel like
exactly. And it's guidance, it's kind of like a parent, because you have, your parents let you, if you keep trying to go downstairs and you're being stubborn and stuff, they might let you go down a stair or two, and then when you get scared and you're stuck, they come and take your hand and lead you down. It's that same kind of care, but also wanting you to grow and wanting you to experience and wanting you to realize yourself, oh, this doesn't work, or this is not good for me, or whatever. But at the same time, I always tell people this, they never, ever want us to go the harder, less joyful route. They always want us to go the easier, more joyful route. That's what they're always trying to get us to do. Yeah. But we don't always do that. Sometimes we just have to go the hard way. And it's very much just like your kids. You could tell them things a million times, but sometimes they have to learn the hard way. And it's just the process of the way we learn as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I remember my 20s were all about not listening to anyone. And it didn't bring me any joy or happiness. It just brought more of the same. Let me see. Oh, here's my next question. So growing up with a strong religious faith with your family, has it been a process integrating or not integrating and discarding religious beliefs with your spiritual experiences and what you've learned from your guides and the other side? I guess you've kind of already answered that.
Yeah. I mean, in 2008, and I've always been, just so people know, and I do political readings once a week, every other week. I'm on kind of a hiatus right now. I'm just taking a little break, but I'll be back in mid August. I do it every other week, once a week. And in 2008, the Mormon church, got very involved in being against gay marriage. And that's when I left the church. I had a really hard time with that because I felt like I can find another way to worship. I can find another a community to be in, but I can't. This to me felt fundamentally wrong. There was something inside of me that said, this is not right. And although there are many things I also, had one foot out the door. It's a very much a patriarchal religion. It has some things I agreed with, some things I didn't. So I had kind of a foot out the door, but that was the catalyst. That was it. And after that, I thought, well, because I was raised in the church, this was really the first time I can kind of explore. And I really did. I really just explored everything. And I read everything I could get my hands on. And what I realized is the more concepts and the more things that I read and understood, and then putting it together with the experiences, the spiritual experiences I had already had, I started to make sense of things. And when you hear a concept like reincarnation, and that resonates with you, that's resonance is that it's telling you the truth. you're resonating with it because it's your soul knows the truth, and your soul is resonating with the truth. That's what that is. And so as I read, there were some things that I was like, oh, I don't think that, or whatever, or I wasn't ready for it. So I would just kind of put it to the side, because maybe later on I'd be like, oh, I actually do think of one really good example is I remember early on reading Dolores Cannon and her talking about all of us having the experience of like being a rock and being a
Yeah.
flower and being,
Yeah.
and then, and it wasn't, and I always thought, oh, that's not, I don't think that's right. And then fast forward about 3 years, I had a quantum healing session done. And I was in a meditative state, and I had the experience of being a flower and
Oh.
being a star in the sky. And what it was that I was blending my energy with a flower. I was blending my energy with a star to fully understand it, to fully get it, and to feel what it felt like. I wasn't the flower, but I was blending my energy with the flower to feel what it felt like to be a flower, the closest thing I could get to being a flower, right? So that's what that is. And so, but I didn't understand it before, but now that I could put it in context and understand what it was, I'm like, oh, that's what that is. That's what that is. So we probably all have had the experience because we're just curious beings, and we probably blended energy with everything. And that's even when people pass and you have that feeling of like, oh, that butterfly is my mom contacting me, or that bird is my dad contacting. That's what they're doing. They're blending with the energy of that being. And that's what you're feeling, is that the butterfly and them at the same time, because they're blending the energy to bring that to you.
Oh, that's beautiful. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and we were actually talking about that because we both work pretty closely with crystals and with stones. And at least for myself anyway, I have this logical understanding that they are of like a second density consciousness, but like, what does that mean? And also, I've heard that too because I've read Dolores Cannon's books. Her work is like groundbreaking, just amazing work. And I've read those stories as well, where like someone was a mountain or a rock, and I was thinking, I'm like, well, how long do you have to be a rock? Like, how long does it take for a rock to evolve consciousness?
Right.
And that makes a lot more sense when you just blend your energy with this other consciousness for a while, and then when you're done, you can kind of evolve.
You just kind of move on. And it's so funny because the memory that I had was my guides encouraging me to stop being a flower. They're like, you like move on from this. Like, you've done this long enough. And the same thing with the star. They were like, you need to move on from this experience because you've done this enough. But so there must be something we really like about that we like that energy blending and having those experiences. But yeah, so yeah. And I do think it's just, we do it until we fully understand it, or we don't want to anymore. It's all very free will based.
It seems like it would be really soothing, like very nice and simple, and you just get to take a break.
And what stood out to me was with the star, that I could feel like, as I moved into it, I could feel like kind of a crackle, this like crackling. And it felt like kind of warm and crackly, and I loved that. And I kept like moving in and out of that just to feel that like crackle and stuff. So I think we're just like we are here. We're very curious. We want to experience things, want to understand things, and I think that's no different when we're spirits.
Right. I have this ability. I think it's part of clairsentience, where you can look at an object and feel the energy. And when I'll go in my backyard and I'll look at the stars, and you can tell that one wants to talk to you when it's like kind of blinking and like changing colors and stuff. If it stands out, I'll stare at it for a few minutes, and my whole body I'll get that same crackly sort of feeling. Like your feet will start crackling, and yeah. It's
I think
beautiful.
it's that, yeah, it must just be that, and the energy of the star, at least as our beings kind of translate it. But that, yeah, yeah,
That cosmic energy, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Let me see. What else do I have? I have so many interesting questions. um, have your friends and family been supportive? Have close relationships had to evolve or fall away?
um, I mean, for my sister who is still in the church, she's actually on serving a mission right now in Hawaii. She's my biggest fan. She is my biggest
Oh,
supporter. She arranged a our first in-person retreat. I mean, she has like been such a support, and really most of my family, either they don't talk about it, they kind of know, and they kind of like, and they probably do think I'm weird or something, but and other people that know me well, um I think they understand it. I think they understand that I believe, or that my experience is that you evolve and change through your whole life, and that
mm,
spiritual understanding is no different. It's a use, because even still, like I said, I'm still learning all the time. And so
yeah.
I think it's just, some people get comfortable in a space and they want to stay there. And just like I wanted to keep being a flower, I think, it's, and your guides may be kind of pushing you to move on, but until you're ready, you don't. And I think, some people stay in a religion their whole life, and some people don't. So people move on from it and figure out other things that they want to explore. And I think it's really up to the individual. My sister, I'll just use her as an example, but she's very open-minded and very open to people having their own expression of their own beliefs, but hers are, she's comfortable in that environment, and she's comfortable. I think part of it is that, just comfortability. She knows the
Mhm.
process. She knows the way it works. She knows the songs. She knows the people there. It's a
Right.
community. So she's just comfortable in that community, and yeah. So I think that the best thing we can do, and what I've learned as well, is just not judge. Just let people evolve at their own pace, and or not evolve at all if they don't, or really evolve a lot. And by evolve, I don't mean like be better than, or be, whatever. It's just where we are. A college student doesn't look down on a preschooler. It's just where they
Mhm.
are. They're in preschool,
Right.
and they'll be in, they'll move to where they're supposed to go. And it's that's just the way it is. And I think spirituality is no different at all.
Right. Yeah. I've definitely gone through the phases of feeling like friends who didn't quite resonate with me anymore. It was like, I've, and this is a big part of discernment too, is feeling what is right for you, and what the difference between what is right for you and what you see on YouTube, what you see these spiritual people with their channels telling you, and feeling it out for yourself. And I remember there's been all sorts of stuff like with the pandemic, the vaccines, whether to take them or not, or if friends didn't resonate with you anymore, you had to just ditch them because they're not your vibration anymore, and they would just hold you back. And all of these different kind of teachings that I would see more so in the beginning of when I first started to wake up, where I did, and I did a lot of judging. It was all like fear based and judgment based, and I did actually leave a few. I'd left a few friends behind because I was like, this is just not going to work. I'm spiritually developing, and this person is not, and they have to go. And then it happened to me, and that really hurt too. So it was like two sides of the coin of the polarity game. And my partner, who I've been with for, oh geez, probably 13 years now, has always been very science minded, very good at math, computer programmer, like very down to earth science, math, logical, loves Star Trek. Favorite character on Star Trek is Spock. And
The
it's
emotionless
been
one.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Like they relate to Spock so much, and it's kind of perfect.
And
But
Gina, just FYI, that really is more how our spirits are. Our spirits are
mm,
not, they're very neutral and they're very non-judgmental and they're very, the emotion, all of that stuff is very human. It's very human. It really
yeah,
is, Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it's been a journey going through this process with my partner, and at times feeling like, is this person going to hurry up? Are they going to catch up to my high vibration? And then just realizing how judgmental that really is, and kind of having to, not having to, but choosing to just let go and let the process happen, and realizing that this person is actually a mirror for you, like a very accurate mirror of
Mhm.
you. And I would say maybe me a couple years ago. So there's a lot of shadow work that can be done with my relationship. It's really, like, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome, the stuff that I've learned in this relationship. But they've really grown a lot from being just this kind of very dismissive skeptic type, and kind of seeing the evolution into someone who's much more open-minded and able to talk about energy and the cosmos and the multiverse and all this stuff. So it's
Yeah,
been really nice to be able to grow with someone instead of just, you know, ditching
right.
them because you feel like they won't catch up to you. So
Yeah, my husband has gone through the same thing. He works, he does the background, the computer stuff for my uh, the political show that I do, and we met at a Bill Clinton rally. Actually, that's how we met. So we're both very
nice.
political and very, have the same kind of, idea of the world. But he was a complete atheist, and I was in the Mormon church when I met him. And so we were always kind of opposite ends. And it's interesting how we've really met in the middle now. We both have kind of similar views of things. But his, like your partner, is kind of more, it's more based in like quantum physics or
Yeah.
science or things like that. And mine is more based in that more, feel of spiritual energy and things like that. So but it's the same. It's the same. And the more our technology starts to blend with the paranormal and with the, being able to actually see stuff with our eyes and hear stuff with our ears, it's becoming undeniable that there's, even for the biggest skeptic, that there's something. They may not understand it, or we may not understand all of it, but there's something. And
Yeah.
I think it will just keep growing. And as people have NDEs and we have the technology to share it, it's like, all of these things are culminating in, I think, us being less afraid of death. I think that's part of why this is happening. But I also think the veil is thinning. Our vibration on the planet is raising. It's all meant to happen,
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the entire universe is going through this process. The
Yeah.
stars, the planets, the sun. Obviously, the sun's going through it. Everything is evolving right now at this accelerated rate.
Yeah.
And that's why shows like your show and your community are so great, because then people have places to feel comfortable talking about their experiences. So,
Well, and you
um,
too, Gina. I mean, and the fact that you heard the call and you answered it, even that
hmm,
you talked about with me before we got on, but that you heard this, I heard the same thing for a different
hmm,
reason, because this was in like early 2000 or later 2017, and people were really worried. People were really nervous,
yeah,
and I got the call then. And you're getting the call now, and there's a reason why. And there's a reason why that you're doing it now, and there's going to be more people hearing that call of, you need to get out there. And part of it is that there will be people that resonate with Gina and listen to Gina, and Gina will say things or put things in a way that people get it and understand it and need to hear it. and then they will with me or with somebody else. And that's why it's like, it's time for you now to get out there, because maybe this audience needs to hear from you and resonate with you. And I think that it's so brave, because I know how scary it is to put yourself out there. The first, I still remember the fear of putting my first video out there and how scary it is to take that leap. And so I commend you just for being brave enough to, because it's one thing to hear it, but it's another thing to act on it. And I think that really shows, it also shows your guides, and maybe too why things might accelerate for you spiritually, because once you take that leap with your guides, they know you're all in, and they start to communicate. Things come at a faster clip, things become louder, you have more experiences. It really does get the ball rolling in a way that nothing else in my life did, as far as connecting spiritually. Once I started the channel, it's like messages came more quickly, messages came differently, as everything just like accelerated. So expect that.
Okay. Well, honestly, I had a pretty different experience from you when it comes to, like, you seem like you've always been kind of actively working with spirit. And for me, I remember when I was really, really, really young, probably about 2 to 4, I had friends that would show up at night and teach me how to fly around the house and fly around the yard. And I would go look in at my parents and like fly around and stuff. And I had a lot of these experiences. And then parents divorced when I was 4, and things kind of really shut down. And I remember still having a very strong interest in the paranormal. Like, I was obsessed with reincarnation and with ghosts and ley lines and with Bigfoot, and just had this really strong interest. But I never thought that any of this stuff would happen to me. And then it kind of just all got put on the back burner once life kind of took hold, and I was kind of just on autopilot for a really long time. But my family was pretty, on my mother's side, they were very, very religious, very Eastern European, Ukrainian, Russian Catholic. Like, you go to church every day, and it was very dogmatic. And so my experience with religion, I always felt repelled. I always felt repelled by it. It was boring. I always fell asleep on the bench, and it was hard, and you had to sing, and like, I never felt connected to it in that way. But I've noticed throughout my life, I've always felt this like inner drive or like push to do something. Like, I was always looking at my watch, just like, what? I need to be somewhere. Why am I here? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I know I'm supposed to be doing something. And then it kind of all exploded in 2020, when we were all at home, and we were there for like a year and a half. And yeah, I feel like we all have different experiences, but the main thing is this drive to reconnect with the all that is, with source. Like, that's the main drive. I feel like a lot of people, well, probably most people with addictions and with a lot of behavioral health issues, I mean, a lot of it can be, chemical imbalance and stuff. But like, I feel like the basis for a lot of that is this feeling of disconnection to source. Yeah. And it's that like kind of inner pain that people feel. And it's like, well, what do? I guess you eat some candy bars. I guess you get drunk every night, so, but it's that, it's that reconnection. So I feel like, and that ties in with this channel. Like, I know that if I don't do what my guides say, I have learned in the past that I'll get a nudge, and then I'll get a tap on the head, and then I'll get a 2x4 upside the head. If I don't listen to them, something dramatic will happen. And it's better for me to just listen to them the first time. So I feel like it has been quite a journey coming onto camera and not even learning, just saying F it and just asking questions. At first I thought it was going to be all shiny and polished and stuff, but like that doesn't work for me. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
coming on camera
Yeah.
and speaking in front of people and getting a hold of these people that you've been watching for years on YouTube and being like, "Will you come on my show and talk to me?" It's it's really an experience, and it's so helpful, and it feels very supportive to have people like you connect with me and tell your stories, because this channel helps me as much as it helps anybody else.
Yeah, that I find the same thing with mine. It's the same, it's exactly the same. And it will evolve to Gina, where you start is not going to be where you are in a year or 2 years. It's like anything
Right.
like that, it's like any other, uh, thing in your life, whether it's parenting or your job or whatever. It's ever evolving, and I think that was a really insightful thing as well, that that's part of what is I think a benefit to being able to connect with your guides and hear your guides is you don't need that 2x4 most of the time. You get it. And I think that's why, you know, you see a lot of spiritual people who kind of just drift along in life because they don't tend to have, you still have to go through life. Life is hard. Life is just life. But the stuff that maybe you would have had to go through the hard way a few years earlier when you weren't hearing your guides, you don't have to do that anymore. It's life is softer in a way. It's not as brutal. That's at least that's the way that I see it, so I think there's a real tangible benefit to being able to hear your guides and being willing to trust and listen. That really does help. And you don't have to, people go through life all the time, never hearing their guides. They just live their life and do whatever. And I believe everybody hears their guides, whether they know they do or not. It sounds like you. So, and it feels like you, like I said, they're subtle and in the background. So it feels like you when you feel like maybe I should go this way and not this way. An atheist could just say, I changed my mind. But as a more spiritual person will say, my guides told me, you know what I mean? So it's just that recognition of it. But your guides don't care if you give them credit or not. They're going to be there anyway, trying. But when you can tune in, it really does make your life a little just easier in some way, or more, you can navigate it better or something. There's something, and not to say you're not going to go through hard stuff or surprising stuff or whatever, because that's just how life is. But it gives you, I don't know if you found this as well, but it is one of the benefits I found, is that your life is just a little softer. It's not as harsh.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Some of the pressure I feel like is taken off, because I mean, I'm speaking just for myself, but I've always felt this internal push and pull, like I said, like you're late for a very important date, like you're late for something. And now that I've always been connected, but now that I've kind of started to trust myself a little bit more and doing the work, doing the shadow work, the inner work is vital. It's so important, because if you don't clear out some space, you won't be able to hear anything, because you're just full of noise.
Yeah.
But since I've been actually doing what they've suggested, I've felt just this more inner peace and more ease for
Yeah.
myself, and like a lightness almost, where it's just like,
It is. It is. And even the hard stuff isn't exactly. And even the hardest stuff isn't as hard, because there's a higher order you kind of trust in. And there's also kind of a I guess a deeper or a more nuanced understanding. It's also quite, obvious and clear that good and bad doesn't last. It passes. It's a passing storm. If it's something really negative and hard and difficult, it still passes if you let it. I think sometimes we'll like identify with an illness, and so we'll hang on to it, or we'll identify with being the victim, so we'll hang on to it. And it's not like we want to do this to ourselves. It's more subtle than that. It's more it might be subconscious or whatever, just our ego or whatever. But I think that yeah, it just makes things a little more now. You have more tools in your toolbox. I think that's part of it.
Definitely. Sorry, I know they go
No,
nuts.
that's exactly my. I'm surprised. I thought it was my dog at first. So I'm like, oh,
Oh
sorry.
yeah, your little guy. He's so cute. He's so cute. I feel like, and this is just me personally, I feel like ancestral healing is so important because like the epigenetics of it, the ancestral memory is in your field. It's in your subtle bodies. It's in your physical body. And I feel like that's where a lot of that um, stuff that like weighs you down comes from. Like I've noticed in myself with my shadow work, a lot of my ancestral stuff from my mother's side is from the Ukraine, from Russia, where it's that like resignation, long suffering, like oppressive, sort of repressed sort of stuff. And it's been a journey releasing, transmuting a lot of that stuff. But it really, really helps you and it happens kind of naturally. Like you do this work and then all of a sudden you notice yourself, some conflict will happen, or you'll get into a fender bender or something, and you don't have those same like knee-jerk hysterical reactions that you used to. It's more of a just like you're more centered, and it's like it surprised myself a little bit. Some of these situations I've been in recently where it's just like, no big deal, it's okay. Whereas before I would have lost it, crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of, especially with Ukraine and things like that, you have a lot of real-time triggers that are happening right now, so you have a lot of that as well, that probably is, things come up that you're like, why am I feeling this so deeply? I'm not there. Why am I, and yeah, so I could imagine that kind of ancestral. And I think a lot of women, one of my theories, I don't know if it's not based in anything, it's my own just theory, but that why you're seeing a lot of like public meltdowns from women, and particularly women. I mean, you see them from men, but particularly women, anger outbursts from women. I think that Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. It's unexpressed emotional pain. And it can go on for generations, or it can go on collectively as a group. And I think right now women are going through something. Women are going through, with our rights being backed up, and a lot of, things with the Me Too movement. There's been just a lot of stuff with women, like you said, doing shadow work and working through old stuff that's been around forever, feeling repressed and feeling put down and feeling put in a box and feeling, I think that, and so I think that rage and that energy that's coming up right now is old. It's not, It's not, people are just reacting to it because it's there. And as a woman, you feel it. And then you don't, especially if you don't know what it is, or you're not in touch with that, it can just feel like it's a volcano, or there have been times where people have said things on the news, or a certain person has said something in a speech, and I am triggered like you can't believe. And it's just that old pain coming up that you can feel. And you're right, it's a perfect opportunity. And I think that, again, being connected with your guides and being connected with your ancestors, being connected with your family in spirit, it can be such a help to know that, oh no, that's just old, and I need to let that go, or I need to integrate it and work with it, or use it as my part of my shadow work, or part of my own spiritual growth, or part of my own growing my non-judgmental self, or whatever. But but I think a lot of that stuff is coming in. And then you have all stuff with race coming up where people are
Yeah.
feeling it again, and it's all coming back up, and you can just, but it's all coming up. My guides in like 2018, I think I started hearing the phrase from my guides, the great unearthing. And it's talking about all these old energies coming up, but it's so we can deal with them. It's not for nothing. It's not just to make us be tortured by it. It's
Right.
to help us,
Yeah.
it's to help us finally deal with it, because it's there. It's just been repressed. It's just been pushed down. And it's time for it to come up so we can deal with it and release it, ultimately release it.
Right. And
And
I guess
heal,
for people
heal
who,
too. Yeah.
yeah, you got to feel it to heal it, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And so I don't know how many people are really familiar with the term shadow work, but basically it is, well, in my experience anyway, what I do is, I'll go throughout my day and I'll have a reaction about something. Like, say I see somebody walking down the street and I'm like, ugh, I don't like their shirt, or, oh, they're ugly, or whatever. And instead, like before, I would just be like, oh, knee jerk reaction, whatever, carry on. They're ugly, whatever. But now I've gotten the awareness to kind of be like, wait, back up. That was kind of messed up. I don't want to, what was that about? And go inward and find that place within myself that feels ugly, that feels judged, that doesn't feel like they are seen, or whatever it is, but to go within yourself and to transmute it by loving that part, by loving that aspect, be like, I love you, little Gina, the little part of me
Mhm.
that doesn't feel good in yoga pants, or whatever it is. But that's basically shadow work. It's not like this big fancy term. I mean, I guess it was Dr. Carl Jung made it up, but I mean, for me, that's kind of my go-to transmuting method. Is I'll just transmute it through the heart. And it's kind of, I've learned through my mentor that it's kind of, shadow work is like a lifetime sort of, it's a lifestyle
Mhm.
basically. Like, once, it's kind of like with Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. You see it
Yeah.
everywhere. You see shadow everywhere, and you're like, transmute, transmute, transmute.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
after a while, just you feel lighter. And then you notice your external reality kind of changes too. Like, things just get better. Your relationships are better. You feel like you're better at communicating your ideas and whatever to people. I feel like things just get better once you really start doing some deep dives on yourself. So,
And I think that's what when we talk about the fifth dimension, I think that's what it is.
mhm.
I think it's that, because it is a shift in consciousness. You you feel it, and there is a lightness to it, and that's your vibration lightening. That's your vibration raising. And when that happens, you're not attracted to the dark stuff. You're not pulled in to the dark stuff or the negative stuff. You don't want to hang around with all those friends that gossip all the time. You tend to want to go and hang out with the friends that are whatever, that they like to knit or whatever.
Mhm.
It's like you shift, and so instead of your day being filled with, I'm gonna go and hang out with these people, and then I feel all kind of irritable and icky afterwards. You're resonating. You're pulled to hang out with another type of person, and afterwards, after you knit, you feel relaxed and happy and stuff. And that's how it's not this, at least in my understanding and the way that I feel about it, it's not this otherworldly thing where all of a sudden everything's blissful. It's a shift in your perception and behavior. That's all it
Mhm.
is. And
Right.
then it starts to affect everything, and the way you move throughout the world. And it doesn't necessarily mean that in the fifth dimension you won't have a problem. It just means that it won't affect you in the same way, and you won't see it in the same way. You might see it as, oh, this is an opportunity. Oh, and this, I didn't expect this to happen. This is another opportunity to learn. That's weird. You just see it differently. And that's what makes it easier and more tolerable and better and happier and lighter. I think that's the biggest difference, is that everything, like I said, everything seems a bit softer and lighter.
Yeah. And you have this like not willingness, but like for me anyway, I kind of want to be more vulnerable with everybody. I don't want to put on that mask anymore. I don't want to like act the way that I feel other people would want to see me. You know, it's much easier to just be authentic and speak your truth, I guess. So
It is. It is, and I think that we in our I do a club, but within that club I do like a monthly spirit message and a practice, and we did a whole month on being authentic and finding out kind of who you are, what you like, what brings you joy, because sometimes we get so involved in life, especially as I think it happens. I'm sure it does happen to men, but I think it just happens in a different way to women, where your mom and your daughter and you kind of cater to everybody in a different way. And I think you lose yourself. And I remember having maybe it's a profound thought, I don't know, but it was just a realization when I was about 14 that I'm a different person at church than I am at school. And I'm a different person with my parents than I am with my friends. And which one's the real me? Which one's me? They're all clearly all aspects of me, but I think that you can lose yourself in being just mom and so I think there is a point where you kind of need to figure out again, what do I like? Or is that what I believe? Or is it just how I was raised or what? And I think it's really a great practice to go in and figure stuff out again and rediscover who you are, because I think if you don't know who you are, how are you going to be authentic? If you're like, you're trying to be all these things for other people, how are you going to know what's authentic, who you are? So rediscovering that, I think is so important. And if you've forgotten, maybe you always have been authentic, and that's great. But yeah, I think and it shows growth, that you do realize, I'm just going to be myself, and then oh well, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So many of us have this tendency to, and I've noticed this is a lifelong sort of pattern for me that I am in the process of breaking. The people pleaser and kind of a little bit of the chameleon, a little bit where you're just like, yeah, I'll be this for this person because I know how they are, and I'll be this around this person. And, you don't want to rock the boat around this person, so I'll not tell them this thing, or, it's so ingrained, I feel like, for me anyway. And that's been very interesting, picking that apart and noticing yourself doing it and trying to change it mid-sentence is definitely
yeah, because I think people pleasing, I think it's a trap, right? It's a trap because you feel like you're doing it for other people, but you're really doing it for yourself. You're really trying to just ease your own discomfort in saying no, or saying I can't do that, or maybe they won't like me. You're easing your own discomfort on behalf of other people. And I think empaths do that very naturally. I think they always want to make sure everybody's okay. And I think that I loved one, her name's Marie. I can remember her last name, but she's wonderful. And she said about empaths and the fact that empaths and narcissists a lot of time find each other. And she was saying that, and I just love this idea and this this explanation, because I had that experience myself, and I know a lot of empaths do, where they get involved with a narcissist, or they have a narcissist parent or something like that. And I think that the best explanation came from her, which is that they need to experience each other, because empaths are here to learn how to love themselves, and narcissists are here to learn how to love other people. And so they're teaching each other that by their own examples, right? And what the good and negative, the positive and negative that comes from that. And so I think empaths, we think of it as being selfish or self-centered, and it's not that. It is it's a way of being loving and kind to yourself. And we need to be loving and kind to ourselves in the same way we're loving and kind to other people. I had to take a step back from my channel because I got COVID. My husband got COVID. I was taking my daughter to doctor's appointments, and I got a mean email out of the blue because of the channel, or a couple actually. But I, instead of powering through and realize, being like, I've got to be there for my community, and I've got to, I was like, no, I can't. I don't want to introduce any of this stuff right now while I'm going through this. And so I took a step back, and that was for me. That was for my family. And people were so kind about it. They totally understood. But to me, it felt like a risk. It felt like, oh, are they going to like me? Are they going to be mad at me? Are they going to hate me because I did this? And the answer is absolutely not no. Maybe there were a few that did. I don't know. Maybe they're like, forget her, But
right.
But you got to do what you have to do. You do as much as you can for others. And I think that's just who at least for empaths, that's who we are. But you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can put it on other people. You really, really do. And it's a lesson I'm learning over and over, and people pleasing is part of that. I learn it over and over and over again. And I do think it's one of the reasons I'm here. So
me too.
Find that balance.
Well, that ties into another question that I have. And it's actually like the reason why I ended up contacting you was because, well, I really respect your work, but also because of that post that you had where, gosh, I can't even remember what, like, time is so weird now. I can't even remember what the situation was. It was with Biden stepping down. That's what it was. And people were upset because you hadn't predicted it. And so, yeah, I read that post where you were going to step back, and I was like, man, good for her. But then I was like, wait a second. This is a really good topic for a video. We should talk about trusting our own intuition. And instead of giving our power away to readers, which I have found myself do before, when I first got into watching like political tarot reading and stuff like that in the beginning, I was watching a lot of them. And I was really, I stopped watching the news and I was relying on political tarot readings. And then when somebody would get something wrong, it was like, oh, well, and find myself getting upset. And it's like, wait a second, you're giving your power away to this person, to this oracle, when you have it all within yourself. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about is how can we, instead of relying on readers and oracles and that sort of stuff, divination, how can we rely more on our inner intuition and trust ourselves more? And instead of giving away our power, we can turn it around and turn into self-sustaining energy bodies.
Yeah, because and that's a big thing for me. And it always has been, because I think it's not good for people and it's not good for the reader. You don't want to put that kind of, and the reason you bring, I think it's the reason that it came about, but because in that post I put, if you need someone to be 100% right, I'm not the person for you, because that's not going to happen. I mean, it's not, you shouldn't be listening to any psychic because they're just not going to be 100% correct. And And it was partly the emotion that people were feeling about it. You know, people were very upset that, and they felt he was pushed out and that Biden was made to step down. And early on, you know, I had said he's going to do the right thing because he has an ego, but he's not egomaniacal. He's not egotistical. He'll do the right thing. If he really feels like it's the best thing to step down, that's what he'll do. And that was a free will decision. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really hard for people to read people's personal free will decisions. I just had a funny thing that happened that I'm going to put on my community page. So I think it's a great learning, thing. But for Kamala's running mate, I kept seeing Shapiro like all through this time, and I hadn't put anything on my channel about it at all because it all kind of happened after I was taking my hiatus. And I thought, that's so weird. I keep seeing Shapiro, and then all of a sudden, I was sitting in the emergency room last night with my daughter, and I heard Tim Walz as clear as day. And so I put it, I texted myself so that it had a timestamp because I just like heard it. And then, so it's like about 8 o'clock last night. But I thought, I think that was the moment or the point where she made the final decision, like the final decision was made. But until that point, it was kind of back and forth for her. I think she was kind of trying to figure it out, trying to weigh it. And depending on if you're a psychic, reaching into that energy, you may get, oh, this is when she's thinking about this person. And this is when she's thinking about this person, depending on how you read. But I just thought it was an interesting experience. And but it also, it's part of that. You're asking about trusting yourself. That's what every reader is doing. They're trusting themselves. They're trusting their team. And every person has the ability to do that. And depending on where you are vibrationally, and depending on where, depending on where you are vibrationally, that's the information you're going to pull out. And so even though I'm a reader and maybe I'm doing it every day, maybe one day I'm really fatigued and I'm picking up on this thing, and you're bright and cheery and you've got all the sleep and you're in a really great space and you're able to kind of reach in or see in a way I'm not able to. That happens all the time. And so, and I always tell people when I do a reading, first of all, I tell people, you should, and this is just me, so no reader should get mad or anything. They have their own way of doing things. But I say a reading once a year, a reading maybe twice a year at the most. Do not go to psychics all the time, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're giving over your own intuition, and you're giving over your own power to somebody else. That if you're going to be the last word. And I tell people that all the time. Even doing orb work, you can see it with your own eyes. And yet at the same time, I'm telling people, this is what I think this means, or this is what I think this color means, or this is what I think this, I've been getting a lot of sacred geometry. This is what I think this means, but you're the last word because you're going to feel it. And these messages are for you. They're not for me. And same goes for a reader. When they get psychic messages, it's for you, not for them. They're the conduit. It's coming through them. And you can have that direct access and just remove the conduit and have that direct access. But it's trusting it. That's the word where people fall down. They get something or they feel something, but because they're unsure of themselves or because it's new, they're not sure if they can trust it. But the trick is that the more you trust, the more you get, the clearer it is. And that's what I teach in my classes. That's the trick. That's the twist. And readers know that. Readers know that, oh, I trust my team. I trust my guys. I trust, and part of it is when you're out in putting it out in public, you have a very close-knit and very trusted relationship with your team, because otherwise you can't do what you do. And so it builds that trust builds very quickly when it's just you in the quiet by yourself with your team, it might build more slowly. But if you watch, as you trust and you listen and you act on it, and it gets louder, and there's a momentum to it that builds, and all of a sudden you're just rolling right along with your team. But that is what needs to kind of, and it's the opposite of the way we do stuff. We want it proof, then we'll believe it. And it really is the opposite. When you work with your spirit team, you have to just trust it and trust it and trust it. And you'll have, we all do. We have places where we misunderstand, or it's not quite. Before the assassination, or assassination attempt, I got the symbol of a red cross. And I kept saying, I keep getting a thing with Trump's Health. I'm not really understanding it, but I keep getting this red cross, but it's not a symbol I've ever seen before. And afterwards, I realized, okay, now I kind of know what that symbol might mean in the future if I get it. It's an unexpected kind of bigger event that has to do with health. It's like you're figuring out all the time, and it's like building a vocabulary, a vocabulary with your team. And now I get things all the time. I get the film Yes Man when I know somebody needs to say yes more to life. I get, I get certain things all the time now that I'll just recognize and say, oh, they're saying this, and that's how it is for everybody. You build that vocabulary, and you're like, oh, I had this feeling last time right before somebody passed, or I had this feeling last time before that was that earthquake, and maybe there's going to be you start to recognize things. That's how your guides work with you.
That is so interesting that you have like go-tos, you have go-to images and stuff. I had this interesting experience a couple of weeks ago where, I hear my guides it's very, very, very quiet. And I just decided to start kind of speaking my intention, being like, okay, you guys, I'm really going to start listening to you now. Okay. So please try to talk to me as loud as you can. And I went to bed the other night, and I was kind of, in that in between sort of half asleep place. And all of a sudden this voice came in, and it just said, your body is full of regret. And I was like, what? Please speak more. Tell me more. And they told me all about how the emotion of regret gets stored in your cartilage and in your joints. And that's one of the reasons for arthritis that a lot of people get, and spinal issues, is those like regret and guilt. These emotions get trapped in the cartilage. And I had this full on conversation with this voice, and it was brilliant. It was really, really interesting. And ever since, I've been going into my energy and just pulling out all this junk out of my joints and stuff. And it's like, you can feel it, like the muscles will start twitching, and like your leg will start kicking, and all this stuff will come out of your feet. And
that's fascinating. That's very much like, reminds me of Louise Hay, how she would always talk about how exactly that, how your body is, and your emotions and your experiences, it's all connected, and it's all affecting it. And of course, it's like it. I'm sure in the 70s or whenever she was doing this, like the 60s or 70s, that it was very weird and like, what are you talking about? But now it's like, of course that's true, because everything's energy. Of course it's true. Of course it's true that the tides and the moon and things can affect people. Of course that's true, because it does it all the time. What are you talking about? We're made up of water, and we're made up of all this stuff. So of course it's affecting us, but it's such a weird concept back then. It was not a normal thing, but you're saying that, and I'm completely resonating with that. I'm like, that is exactly right. Of course that's right. Of course it is. Yeah.
And that brings us back to shadow work, why releasing a lot of those trapped emotions is so important, because, it really does affect your physical health, your mental health, all of it. So
it does.
I wanted to talk to you about the orb stuff. I'm so fascinated by your orb sessions. And you're starting to see sacred geometries as well now?
Yeah. Well, so I started about this is about 2 years now that I started getting messages about doing mediumship. And I don't really, I do like mediumship, but I don't really consider myself a medium for some reason. I kind of just feel like it's something that I can do sometimes, and I do it, but I don't really think of myself that way. And so I was kind of resisting it, like we do, and questioning it and being like, is that right? Is that what I'm supposed to do? And then I started getting with a twist. And I'm like, with a twist? How would I do mediumship with a twist? I don't understand. And then one night I was doing my orbs, which I always do all the time, and I've been doing for years now. And I realized it's orbs. They want me to do mediumship with orbs. And so that's what I've been doing the last, it's been several months now, but it's been about a year that I had to kind of work it out, how I was going to do it. And basically I connect with orbs, and I ask, and what orbs are has changed for me over time, because at first I thought it was like they were the person, they were the thing, After a session I had with my dad, he's passed, but he was working with me one night, sending me orbs. And for whatever reason, the way that the light was hitting in the kitchen, I could see his silhouette standing there. And I was like, I can see you. And I said, send me an orb. And I saw his hands go in front of him like this, and then move really quickly back and forth. And then an orb shot out. And I realized, and that's that's when I realized that, oh, they're standing there sending out orbs. It's not that they are the orb. I guess it can be that, like if it's guides or angels or pets. But for people, they're actually standing there in their light body sending us orbs. It's kind of like sending an energetic kiss. That's kind of what they're doing. It's how they're doing it.
Aww.
And so when I realized that, I'm like, okay, that is complete, changes everything, because now I know to call in the person. They can send out orbs as I ask questions. So I usually ask them to tell me they're there, and then they answer yes and no questions through the orbs. And then they also have added nuance by they'll send color sometimes. And so I start to, again, it's like building that vocabulary, understanding as I go. And this is where being an intuitive really helps, because I can feel stuff. Even now, like they have me moving around the house because the conditions in a room may not be quite right. So they'll say, go downstairs, or turn to the right, or turn to the left. And that has sped up the process for me, because I was doing it in one room all the time. And sometimes the conditions would be wrong and I wouldn't get anything. And I was like, what is going on? So now they'll say, I won't get anything. And they'll say, go downstairs. The conditions are just better there. So, and I don't know if it's the way the wind's flowing, if it's the moisture, I don't know what it is, but orbs are just tiny. Orbs are little. When you see them with your naked eye, a lot of times they look like little sparks. They can be illuminated depending on how much your third eye is open and how connected you are. But for people that just see them with their eyes, they look like tiny little sparks. And the camera illuminates them so that anybody can see them. So whether it's the Ring camera or whether it's I use the iPhone camera, it illuminates them so everybody can see them. And so that's how I do the mediumship through orbs. And what I have found, and what the point was in doing this, is to help those people that are on the edge. They kind of think there's something, but they're not quite sure. They're spiritual and they know their loved one's okay, but they just want to make sure. They just want that extra bit of validation. And so it can really help those people that are deep in grief or are not really sure, but they want to believe their loved one's okay. It gives them that physical thing that they need to see. And it can really be so, so helpful in the grieving process, in the spiritual process, in and moving them forward. And that's really all our loved ones want for us when they pass. They just want us to keep going and do the best we can, have the best life. Now, I'm out of here now, but you have the best life you can, because they're still there and they're still rooting for us, and they're still going to try and help us and do all the things they did when they were here. But yeah, every single one is different, because every connection is different. So it's, and they have added in sacred geometry, which is where they put 2 and 3 and 4 and sometimes 6 orbs together, and this thing will come floating and stay in front of the camera. And I've had to kind of work with my mentor, my orb mentor, with that, because that's a thing. They have found ways to add in more nuance into the yes and no questions by adding in color and adding in sacred geometry. So it's been unbelievably fascinating. It's also sciencey. I treat it like a science experiment. I make them do things over and over again to make sure it's not a fluke. It's not an accident. It wasn't just a one-off. And they do. There's intelligence there. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Do you see them with your naked eye, or do you have to look back on the video and watch?
Yeah, I do now. I do, because I can see them with my naked eye. And like I said, they're like tiny sparks. They're just like,
I've been seeing a couple sparks in the background.
Yeah.
Around your
You'll
head.
see them around. Yeah, they're just around. They're just around. And they're always around. And it's just that the technology has changed now that we can see them. That's the only thing that's changed, really. Because our guides and our angels, and they travel in that form, and a lot of times to be around us, to heal us. They have healing properties, just so you know. So call in orbs to heal you. I've seen absolutely miraculous things with healing. I don't fully understand it all. I'm learning as I go. I'm definitely a student as much as I am trying to, give people the opportunity to do this themselves. I have a class that people can do, that they can just watch and learn, and it's fascinating, and it's a great way to connect. It's so validating. It gives you proof on camera that, and you can relive over and over again that your loved one's okay, your pet's okay. And they're right there with you too. I mean, there really is after an out-of-body experience I know for a fact that there is a part of the heavenly realms that's right here. It's like it's right on top of our
it overlaps.
It's just vibrating at it's just at a different frequency. And when our spirit exits our body, it's all right there. It's like, oh, here is everybody. Okay. And I really do think that's why we have ghostly encounters, and why we have experience with our relatives and pets and things, because they're right here. They're just at that different frequency. And sometimes when we are in that in between state, or we're, that kind of waking up out of sleep or going to sleep, we're entering that. Our body is basically kind of shutting down, and our spirit is kind of lifting. And that's when you can have those experiences, because your spirit's it's almost like it's more in charge at that point. So it's picking stuff up that you would normally pick up. Or if we work on our vibration, and we work on our frequency, and we learn to kind of, we're kind of expanding our awareness in a different way. It's when our family passes and people leave the physical body, it's incumbent upon us to expand the way we take in information, because we're still confined in this physical form, right? So we're still confined to those 5 senses. And so it's incumbent upon us, like you do the inner work and the spiritual work, and so that expands your awareness, so that you are picking stuff up, and you do notice more, and you are picking up your guides. Now you are, noticing things you didn't notice before. And it's all part of that, expanding those abilities outside of the 5 senses. We all have the ability to do it. We all can. But it's incumbent upon us. When our family leaves, they can see it all. They're fine. They can see the heavenly realms. They can see every dimension. They can see where we are. But we're the ones locked in. So we're the ones that have to expand. We're the ones that have to shift things. But we can't. Anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it. Even, I don't know.
And it takes practice, right? It's like practicing the piano. You know, if you practice every day, you're going to get better faster. And if you practice once in a while, it's going to be patchy, you know? It's just like, it's like anything else you learn. It really is, you know, and the more you practice, the more you can do, the faster things happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I have one last question. I think a while back, I think this was you. I think like a bunch of you guys went to some lodge or something. It was really, I wish I could remember quite what it was, but it was really cold. And I remember you guys were like doing, you were like watching UFOs out in the sky.
Yeah, that was at our retreat. We did a UFO watch kind of night.
And it's funny because, you know, we've never met, but I know all these little things from watching your videos. I know you're a little squeamish when it comes to the ET sort of stuff, but did seeing them change anything inside of you? Did it change you at all?
Well, it changed because I talk about this. It's almost like it's not my lane. Because I think that sometimes we feel like things really like pull us in. We're really fascinated. I've always been fascinated by mediumship. I've always been fascinated by paranormal and orbs and, you know, things like, and seeing shadows and things like that. And other people are like, that's not my thing. My thing is, you know, working in the science field and working with biology and da, da, da. And I kind of feel like it's like, even though it's all in this kind of space, I feel like it's not my lane in a way. And it's not that I don't think it exists. I do. And it's not that but yes, something did change when I was like in that space, was that I realized, oh, they're here to watch over us. It's a guardian kind of. It is like the I think it's called the Guardians of the Garden or something. It's a book that
Dolores Cannon book.
Dolores Cannon book. Yeah. I think it felt like that. It's like someone just like checking out, are you doing okay? Okay, we're going to just make you. That's what it felt like. It had a very guardian feel to it. And so that is one thing that changed. It's like, oh, they're just watching over us. It's kind of like, what are the kids doing? What are the kids up to? That's what it felt like. It felt like definitely a higher intelligence. So when people ask me like, about whatever aliens think about this, or are there aliens involved in this? I always get stuff. I never don't get something. So I know that this stuff is real and it's true. When I feel like I can kind of drift into that lane, but I kind of feel like it's not my lane. And I do think there are people here that is their thing. That is what they do. And they are all in and they're figuring it out and they are fascinated and curious and they're digging in, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. It's not what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't mind dabbling. I don't mind, going in, and I fully, like I said, I fully believe it. I fully do. But that was doing that night, that feeling came through so strongly that they were like almost like a parental figure or something, just like, what are you guys up to? What's going on? How's it going? It was that kind of feel, a guardian feel, which I didn't expect, but that came through very strongly. So after that, I thought, oh, that's what they are. They're looking after us. There may be that physical, better and more easily moving into the physical than maybe spirits can, or, they just have this
Yeah.
ability to kind of, that's their thing. That's where they are. Yeah.
Hmm. It's funny because that's I have kind of a big connection with the light ships. It started happening in Detroit, and when I was living in Detroit, and it's followed me to my current place where I can just go outside any time of the day, and there's going to be somebody up there, and they'll flash at me, or they'll just like hang out above my house, and it's pretty incredible. I don't always see orbs. I'll only see orbs every once in a while. I think it has to be like warm. Something about the weather. Like last summer I saw a ton of them, and they were very prevalent. But yeah, I have that same relationship with the light ships. So, and they do kind of love bomb me as well. They'll like beam some love energy at me, and I'll be like, "Oh, thank you. That was so nice of
Oh,
you."
yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes me, I think that, so it's clear there's a connection there for you as well. And I think
Mhm.
it's partly too, you're not afraid. As I always tell people with orbs, one of the things the two things to do orbs: to set the intention, like decide why I'm doing this. Am I just curious, or whatever the intention is? It doesn't really matter. Just set the intention, but then
Mhm.
don't be afraid, because they don't want you to ever be afraid. They don't want to make you scared. They try to take away fear, so they don't want to make you fearful. And I think so many people have fear of, UFOs, or what is it, or and I think you, not only are you setting that intention and expectation are kind of linked, and I think you have that expectation of seeing something, but you're also not afraid. And so of
Mhm.
course it's going to happen to you. To me that makes perfect sense, that you're, of course they would show up and say hi and how you doing, and
It's
because
kind of
you
it
like
is
it.
kind of a family thing. It's kind of just like, "Hey guys, how you doing? What's going on?
Yeah,
Having fun up there?" It's like
and that's
it's
great.
very
And yeah,
yeah, it's
that's
very
so great that
comfortable
you
at
have
this
that
point.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we're at 1:31:28. We've been talking for an hour and a half. I should let you go. You probably need to eat
This is
lunch
what
or
I do
something.
all the time. I mean, I love to, I could talk about this stuff forever, because there's so much to touch on, but it's something I just love to do. And so thank you for having me, Gina. I really appreciate it.
It
I've
was
loved
super
our
fun.
conversation.
Yeah, here, let me turn this off. Let me pause the recording.